been delving into the whole issue of discipleship. The sermons were based on Matthew 10 verses 1 to 4, where we had Jesus calling those he wanted to have as his learners. And we established that how many weird, strange, and ill-equipped folk ended up on that list. It really was a mad mix. But then we started to see method in Jesus' madness, and things started to unfold as we saw how he gave them power, as we learned how being a disciple is a lifelong process, how it is okay not to be perfect to start with. And then I think the last point of last week's sermon was that we should never, ever have the temptation of giving up. Perhaps there were moments in which disciples of old had that same temptation, where they felt like it's all too much, like the price is too high, the road is too long, and the night too dark. Perhaps they were at times so confused that they wanted to run a mile. But as far as the records show, they stuck it out to the very end, with most of them, if not all of them, paying the price of a martyr's death. Now today I want this preaching to lead up to some kind of climax. Hopefully so that we can once and for all make up our minds if we want to be learners of Jesus or not, whether we want some kind of special relationship, special covenant with him. Because it's February, my mind went back to my Methodist days. For every February in the Methodist Church, across the country, if not across the world, in every Methodist church, there would be a covenant service. It started way back in 1755, when John Wesley thought that this would be a good way to kick off the new year by his people called Methodist. And of course, when I was serving the Methodist for 13 years, was always really wary of a covenant service. For I would hate for it to be only ritual and religion. For something that is repeated year after year isn't necessarily holy or needed. So I always tried to have a new spin on the covenant service I would conduct. The prayer, of course, needed to stay the same because there's just something profound about those words that John Wesley penned originally. So the rest of the liturgy I would always tweak, but when it came to that highlight of the actual prayer, I didn't want to take the risk of messing with that. Is there anybody here who vaguely from their former Methodist days perhaps remember the covenant service? Or even the covenant prayer? There are a few hands going up. Remember that very daunting prayer which started with these words: I am no longer my own, but yours. After that line, everybody was usually quite awake. For what a daunting and what a haunting line that is. I am no longer my own, but yours. For your sake, I will be hungry or full. I'm now committing myself to be empty for you or to be filled with you, for you. To be set aside for you, to be used for you, to be placed on high places for you, or to be dragged low for you. I'm giving myself to be at your disposal fully and completely. And towards the end of the prayer, there's a line that goes like this: and so, blessed God, I am yours and you are mine. And let this covenant, now made on earth, be ratified in heaven. Of course, the word covenant is no longer a user-friendly word. I can't say that it often features in my daily conversation. I think the word that I would like to zoom in on, even now when we talk about our covenant with Jesus, our covenant with God, would be the word relationship. And as we celebrated this special table, that is what we emphasized. That we can stand in a special relationship with the most holy God, free and forgiven. The Gospel of Mark is known as the martyr gospel. Not only was it written before the others, it was also written during a very crucial time in the first century. Historians tell us that Mark came to be written during the first Christian persecution under the Emperor Nero. And perhaps that is why Mark has a strange ending. For we are not sure if the ending we have in Mark's Gospel, chapter 16, verses 9 to 20, was actually written by Mark. It looks like it was added much later. It looks like Mark wrote under incredible pressure, probably because he heard in a distance a sword being sharpened for the chopping off of his very own head. Mark is known as the martyr gospel because as he was writing, Christians were being killed left, right, and center, having been blamed by the emperor for having started, purportedly, a great fire in Rome. It is also during this persecution when Paul and Peter lost their lives. So Mark, I suppose, has lots of reason for making a big fuss of how difficult it would be to follow Jesus. And in Mark 8, we have the introduction of exactly that. Now, right from the start, Jesus had made it abundantly clear that going after him would be reasonably hard. When one studies the Sermon on the Mount, one can see that not only between the lines, but it stares you right in the face. For as one comes eyeball to eyeball with the Sermon on the Mount, you must either make up your mind if you're going to give your all to this cause, following this radical preacher who comes here with new teachings, not confirming the system which says eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth, but somebody who actually dares to preach that you need to forgive those who wrong you and love your enemy. Those teachings were revolutionary in New Testament times. So right from Jesus' introduction to society, he sets the foundation and says to all those who want to follow him, guys, you better be strong. You better be courageous. You're going to have to be bold and brave if this is the path you choose to walk. In places like Mark chapter 8, however, this is taken off the charts. For there Jesus cranks up the volume and takes it up a notch. Let me read to you from Mark chapter 8, as from verse 34. Then Jesus called the crowd to him along with his disciples and said, I'm in Mark 8, verse 34. Jesus is talking to his disciples and to the crowd saying the following, if anyone would come after me, he or she must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. Now these words toll an insane bell in one's mind. For if I put two and two together, I'm rather surprised that Jesus managed to get any followers to go after him. When it comes to all this sacrificial stuff, when it comes to having to deny yourself, and as if that is not enough to also pick up your cross, I'm wondering why people didn't run the other way, why people didn't want anything to do with him. For here, the secret is revealed. If anybody wants to follow Jesus, it's going to be heck of a tough. For if anyone wants to lose his, I'm just going to use the his. It's too difficult to try and say he's and her all the time, okay? But ladies, you're included. Better give you a heads up. For whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for me and for the gospel will save it. What good is it for a person to gain the whole world, yet forfeit his soul? Or what can a man give in exchange for his soul? If anyone is ashamed of me and my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, sounds very familiar, the Son of Man will be ashamed of him when he comes in his Father's glory with the holy angels. It's like Jesus waited for this bombshell to be dropped. And yes, I don't know how he got it right to, after this, still keep together a band of followers. Either those really, really, really wanted to be his disciples, or they still did not get it. They still weren't clear about the price they were about to pay. Let's talk a little bit about these verses as I try to unpack them for us one by one. The first thing that Jesus says about discipleship, if anybody is going to bother coming after him, trying to follow, they would have to deny themselves. And right there, we find the first challenge. We find the challenge of making as we ourselves don't exist. Jesus probably knew that somewhere along the line he would go through a very painful denial. We have it in the priest's courtyard that night where Peter denied Jesus. Not too long after this preaching. Peter doesn't deny Jesus once, not twice, but 3 times before the cock crowed, just like Jesus had predicted. What does an denial involve? It involves Peter saying that he did not know Jesus. And the person on duty wanting to know from Peter if he had also been there when it mattered, this person says, "Hey man, you look awfully familiar. I'm pretty sure I've seen you with that unorthodox rabbi." And Peter says, no, I wasn't there. I don't know him. I've never seen him before. What does denial, self-denial then entail for us? Could it be that we need to say that we don't know ourselves, that we don't recognize our own needs, and that we are finally at the point where we are willing to put ourselves last? I don't know about you, but I have often battled with this. I've often battled to say to myself, "Bevan, you don't exist. You need to live for others." I have often battled with having to put myself last. And yet Jesus' teachings are riddled with him putting himself last and teaching all those who want to come after him to also put themselves last. What do you think the parable of the Good Samaritan is all about? It's all about forgetting self. Jesus was, of course, ready for the trick the teacher of the law wanted to play on him in Matthew chapter 22. For there they tried to corner Jesus, wanting to know from him what his opinion is about the most important commandment. Somebody who was an expert in the scriptures came to him and say, Jesus, how about it? Tell us what according to you is the greatest commandment. The teacher of the law probably expected Jesus to say Sabbath observance, for that was a big thing amongst the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Yet, that was not Jesus' answer. Or perhaps the teacher of the law thought that because times were so tough at the time, maybe Jesus would give the answer of not having to give false witness as the most important commandment. Or maybe not murdering would be a decent bet. But that's not where Jesus went. Jesus said, according to him, the most important commandment is loving the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your mind, and with all your strength. And then Jesus added for good measure the second bit, saying you need to love your neighbor as yourself. And perhaps there we get an unmistakable clue of what our priorities should be like. How important our neighbors should be. Jesus emphasizes this around every corner. In every sermon he ever preached, this becomes so loud and so clear. Live for others. That is the only way you can find joy. And I suppose when I look at my own life, the only times when I have felt free and fulfilled was when I could wash the feet of another. I remember a very corny, a very kitsch chorus we sang in Sunday school years and years ago. It had something to do with the spelling of the word joy, J-O-Y. Something about putting Jesus first and then others, and only lastly yourself. Jesus himself is a perfect example of this. For Jesus gave himself to that community of old, healing the sick, casting out demons, fighting for the poor, feeding the hungry. He lived for others. It doesn't take rocket science to see that. I often worry about church people's touchiness, and it's maybe a bit of preaching that I'm going to attempt sometime soon. For when I think of how touchy church people are and how easily they complain about things that don't matter, perhaps it speaks a bit of volumes of how important we are to ourselves. For discipleship cannot be about our own gratification, our own pleasure. Our discipleship must be about blessing and benefiting the world. I have battled with this, as I've mentioned, and don't look like you haven't, because if you are human, you share this struggle with me. I have battled with self-denial. You know why? Because I like sitting on my own throne, and I like being my own emperor, sovereign of my own life. But Jesus digs into all that egotistical stuff and says to me over and over again, Bevan, you need to change. I should have probably have known this the minute I signed up, not only to follow Jesus, but also to become a minister. Paul had it figured out by the time he wrote the letter to the Galatians. For in chapter 2 of that letter we read, it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. Some kind of shift must have happened in Paul's mind. Some kind of transformation, some kind of metamorphosis. He must have reached that place of total surrender, saying the words that came from the first Methodist covenant prayer, I'm no longer my own, but yours. Put me to what you will. Let me rejoice, let me suffer for your sake. Let me be full, let me be empty. I am completely and fully at your disposal. It was Dietrich Bonhoeffer, the famous pastor who looked after the German Christians in the concentration camps, who said, when Christ calls somebody to himself, he calls them to come and die. Die to themselves. The second thing I think we have to pay a little bit of attention to is not only the self-denial thing, not that that isn't enough to work on. There's also this having to pick up your cross stuff. That doesn't sit so lekker with me. Couldn't Jesus have used less dramatic language? Would it have killed him if he had said, you know, guys, following me is going to come at a price. There are going to be moments of feeling inconvenienced and feeling awkward. You're going to, at some stage at least, 50% of the time maybe, you're going to have to leave your comfort zone. If he had put it that way, maybe you would have got more takers. But no. He puts it like it is. What a horrible analogy to use, saying, if anybody wants to come after me, they're going to have to pick up their cross. And then, of course, Luke, being Luke, when he writes about this discourse, he says they have to pick up their cross daily, is the word he inserts. Now, in Roman times, crucifixions were often done. Crucifixion was the form of execution in New Testament times. It hadn't been invented by the Romans. They learnt it in Persia, but of course they mastered it in all their colonies. So the audience that Jesus was speaking to would have known exactly what somebody carrying his cross would have looked like. And of course, Jesus' mind must have fast-forwarded a little bit to the day when he would stumble under the weight of his own heavy Roman cross. If there's something we all agree on in this building today, it would probably be this, that crucifixions were ugly and unpleasant. No one would ever say, gosh, I'm so glad I'm a criminal. I'm looking forward to the day when they would staple me to the Roman beam. For crucifixions were horrific and disgusting, to say the very least. And yet the image that Jesus chooses to use, talking about discipleship, is that of carrying a cross. I'm not sure about you, but I have battled with this. For I like to have a convenient life, clean and tidy, and maybe even pleasant on my day off. I don't like it when Jesus says to his disciples, I'm sending you amidst wolves, in the second part of Matthew chapter 10. I'm sending you into a field of wolves. And there are going to be times where you are delivered to the authorities. There are going to be times when you are dragged before councils. There will even be those days where people hate you because of me. All of these teachings of Jesus make me feel rattled and unsettled. Perhaps in this country, we don't have to face physical torture for the sake of Jesus. But soon, or maybe even already, Christians are going through all sorts of things because we march to the beat of a different drum. The world doesn't agree with our choices, with our lifestyle, with our principles, with the values of the kingdom to which we adhere. Jesus made it clear that if you want to follow him, you better look good on wood. Jesus talks about self-denial. He talks about picking up your cross. And then he says, after all of that, you'll be ready to follow me. Now, I've been thinking long and hard about this following business all week because I wanted to come and talk about that today. But let me tell you what my uncertainty is. If Jesus isn't here in person, we can't physically follow him. We can't physically say, there's Jesus in bodily form. We're going to walk behind him and go there where he goes. So what does following Jesus look like in 2023? It must have something to do with following what he said, what he taught, what he instructed. And it must possibly have something to do with following what he demonstrated so personally and so powerfully in the Gospels. You see, anybody can say that they're a follower of Jesus. Anybody can pay lip service. But it is in our daily ways that people will have to ascertain who we follow. And Jesus himself said, by their fruit you will know them. When I think of how Jesus taught the eternal truths of the kingdom of God, it looks like we have our work cut out for us. It's not going to be easy. It's going to at some point take its toll on us. But I am absolutely convinced that there is no more life rewarding than the life following Jesus. The reason for why I follow Jesus is because I am 100% persuaded that this is the only life that holds promise and joy and fulfillment and freedom. If I ever one day find another person better than Jesus to follow, I'll follow that person. But at the moment, I haven't found anybody better, and I won't find anybody better. For there's something unique about Jesus. For Jesus alone is the Son of God revealed to earth, who came to introduce us to another kind of living altogether. And in this kind of living, we discover not only who He is, but who He has called us to be. Don't conform to the measures of the world, Paul says in Romans 12. Instead, have the mind of Christ, Philippians 2. And then in Ephesians 5, I'm sorry to bore you with Paul, but he did leave a whole lot of good stuff for us to use in preaching. In Ephesians 5, he says, be imitators of Christ. That is how you follow Jesus. Jesus is not here in person who we can look at and say, I'm now walking behind you, Jesus. I'm following there where you lead. No, it's a different kind of following. It's following what He taught, obeying His will, and doing His word. And maybe as we all seek to put Him first in our lives, as we all seek to make His kingdom our priority, then the world might just change, even only if it's a little bit. It was Brother Andrew who ended that profound book of his, God's Smuggler, with this line: the journey with Him is the most exciting journey of all. I have sometimes chosen in my services that chorus, I surrender all. Do you know it? All to Jesus I surrender, all to Him I freely give. But I've stopped choosing it. Why? Out of fear that there would be too many of us who sing it without meaning it. Hopefully by the time I get to choose it here at United Church Hermanus, we will all be in the same place with that common prayer, where we can surrender all. Or as John Wesley would have it in his ancient covenant prayer, I am no longer my own but yours. Let me be full, let me be empty. Let me be used by you, let me be set aside for you. No task too great or too small. I am completely and utterly yours for your disposal. May those words echo off these walls today. And may this be our simple, almost childlike prayer. And now, Jesus, you are mine, and I am yours. I want to follow you no matter what it takes until the end of my days. Amen.